Hello React Native developers, I hope you are well. William here recording from beautiful Zurich, Switzerland. You've been tagging me to this Manx 2 example, asking me can it be done in React Native? And you may have already recognized 3 recipes we know and love from React Native gestures and animations in order to implement such an example, namely transitions, circular progresses, and masked views. Let's have a look.
I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love.
This example is brought to us by the great and powerful Manx 2. It's a tap gesture animation. We press on a button and it starts a transition from 0 to 1. We can release the gesture at any point and the transition will go from its current position back to 0. And in order to visualize the progress of the transition, we have the circular progress bar and a masked view on the icon. So it looks like the fill color of the icon goes from the bottom to the top as the transition progresses. There are 2 things which I really like about this example. First is that it looks like we can implement it using 3 recipes for which we already made a dedicated video. First, the transition that goes from 0 to 1. And here the novelty is that the speed of the transition is different depending on if we go from 0 to 1 or from whatever the position back to 0. So it's much slower going from 0 to 1 than going back to 0. But hopefully it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Then we have the circular progress bar, and we've made a couple of videos already on this topic. One where we use an SVG animation in order to build such a circular progress bar, and another one where we use only React Native views. And finally, there is a masked view animation. We can do it a couple of different ways. Here we're going to simply overlay 2 icons on top of each other, one which has a gray color, one which has the primary color, and we're going to animate the height of the icon which has the primary color, and this is going to give us this impression of a masked view on top of the icon. The second thing which I really like about this example is that we do a lot of things with the pan gesture handler, and it's really time to give love to some different kind of gestures. Here there is a tap gesture. Guys, before we get started, one thing, if you're interested to learn the fundamental of gestures and animations, I hope that you will check out my online course at startreactnative.dev. My goal with this course is to provide you with all the tools and knowledge necessary in order to build incredible user experiences in React Native that will run at 60 FPS even on low-grade Android devices. By following this curriculum, the recipes we use in the Can It Be Done React Native series in order to build this complex example should feel absolutely trivial. So if you are interested to harness the fundamental of gestures and animations, I hope that you will check it out at startreactnative.dev. So here I have an empty component, and I guess what we're going to do is create a container and put the button in the middle. So I'm just going to create container here. So styles.container. We center the button in the middle of the screen, justify content center, align items center. We can set some background color. Here it is, and we can create the button component. New file called button.txt. As a property, it will receive the progress of the animation, but maybe for now I'm just gonna show a blank circle. So let's have a button size of, let's say, 100 pixels. So width is size, height is size, border radius is size divided by 2. And background color is white. That looks good. So now we want to wrap this button into a tap gesture handler. And I think the first child should be an animated view. We can, as a helper function, use redash to create the boilerplate for the gesture handler properties we need to set to the tap gesture handler. So not the animated view here, but the tap gesture handler. So gesture handler. And we need one animation value, which is the state of the gesture. So new value, default value is state undetermined, and gesture handler equals, here we use onGesture event from redash, just an helper function to do the boilerplate we need to pass here to tap gesture handler, and the animation value that we need is simply state. State we import from gesture handler. And what we can do here is to build a transition. So we're gonna call progress that goes from 0 to 1 if the gesture is active. So here we are gonna use with transition from redash. So with transition attach a transition to a change in an animation value. I have a video dedicated on this topic which will be linked in the video description. And our animation value here is if the gesture is active, so is state equals state.active. And let's say we set a duration of 2 seconds. And so I need to import this guy. So we have the progress, which we can pass to the button in order to build the different animations that we need. And here we can add a scale animation, so to make the button bigger when it's active. So I'm gonna add a transform scale. So since progress goes from 0 to 1, we can use b interpolate on progress. At 0 it's at 1, and maybe it's 1.2 at when the gesture is active. So nothing is happening. I think it's not active like with the pen gesture handler, but it's began. So the state is either began or end. So you see it animates nicely, and it slowly goes down. So here we want, when we release the gesture, we want the transition back to 0 to be faster than the transition going into 1. So we are gonna add a condition here. So this one is active. And the duration. So if the transition is active, we use 2 seconds. If not, we use 255 milliseconds. Need to import condition. Let's have a look. So here it slowly goes up. I release. It goes fast. Perfect. So now let's build the animations in the button. So we have the progress animation value. And the first thing we're gonna do is to have the circular progress. And we have a component. We have actually 2 components to do it. One which is done in SVG, one which is done using views. We've built this component before in previous videos. So I'm simply gonna use circular progress here from components, and the radius is, say, size divided by 2. The background color is white, and the foreground color is the primary color. So style guide palette.primary. we need to pass also progress as property, which we get from here. So that looks pretty good. So it takes 2 seconds, 250 milliseconds to go down. Perfect. So we're gonna overlay on top of it the icon. So we're gonna use the absolute fill positioning. So style. Let's call it icon container, or container maybe. Let's see. So let's call it container, and let's put one icon. We need a fingerprint icon. So I'm gonna select this one from material icon. So icon name is fingerprint. Color is gray. So I'm gonna use style guide, palette, oh sorry. Background. Perfect, so icon is material icon. So from expo vector icons. And we need to create some styles. So we need to decide on a certain stroke width for the circular progress. So stroke width, let's say 10, maybe 20. Let's see, we can change it. So here we overlay on top of the circular progress bar of the container. So position is going to be absolute. Top is going to be so stroke width. Left stroke width, right stroke width, bottom stroke width. Let's have a look. Oh, and background color white. That looks very strange. Let's see. I think it's because here we play to build a circular progress using views, we play with the Z index. Is it possible that it goes on top of this? Let's see. Okay. So let's put it back to white. Add some border radius, which would be size minus stroke width times 2 divided by 2. That looks good. Now we need the icon, so let's set an icon size. Let's say 96 points. So size is icon size, and we're gonna need to center it into the circle. Here we're not gonna use flexbox, because if we use flexbox to center the icon, when animating the height of the icon we overlay on top of it, it's gonna modify the layout. So let's create a style called style.icon. And so we need a top and left, and the top is gonna be size minus icon size divided by 2, and same for left. No. If I set width to be icon size and height to be icon size, I think the problem here is that we have the size, it's not size, it's size minus stroked width times 2. Yes, now it's centered. So we have size that we use here, but it's not really the size. So we have this one we should factorize. So let's call it content size. So yes, content size divided by 2. And here it's content size minus icon size divided by 2, makes perfect sense to center it. Now let's overlay the active icon on top of it. So here color is gonna be primary, and we're gonna call it active icon. And here position is absolute. Looks good, and let's try to animate on the height. So actually I'm gonna put this into an animated view. Set the style here, and we have a height animation value which we interpolate from progress. So at 0 height is 0, at 1 height is icon size, I guess. Let's have a look. Okay. Yeah, looks good, and let me see if it goes to... Yeah, that looks good. I think I'm just trying to see if at 1... If I'm trying to see if the icon here animation finishes before the end of the circular progress. It's hard to say, but I think it looks good. And what we can do is that when we reach 1, we can switch the icon. So we can create a state called active, set active. So use state, default is false. And we're gonna do a use code block. So if the progress equals at 1, we can call back the JavaScript userland and to set the active state to true. So active equals true. Need some imports here. And here the icon, if the animation is active, the icon is, let's pick an icon, check mark from the same family. So from material, so check circle. If not, it's the fingerprint. Here, same for the color. So if it's active, the color is primary, if not, it's the background color. And here we don't show anything if we are active. So opacity, if it is active, the opacity is 0, if not it's 1. Let's have a look. Alright, I can release. Very nice. And let's go up. So exactly like in the Meng 2 example. In order to implement this great example from Meng 2, we used 3 recipes, transitions. So when the gesture is active, we go from 0 to 1 in 1 or 2 seconds. And when we release the gesture, we go fast back to 0. And we've made a dedicated video on this topic. I will link to it in the video description. We also use circular progress animation in order to visualize the transition. And again, I will link the dedicated videos on this topic in the video description. And finally, we also built, by overlaying 2 icons on top of each other, masked view animation. I hope you guys enjoyed this example. I'm looking forward to talk to you soon, and in the meantime, happy hacking.